All right, we are live. Welcome to this week's episode of the RDU Buzz, where we go over all things Raleigh and Durham, talking about news and developments coming to the area, restaurants, real estate, recreation, all kinds of fun things. So thank you guys for tuning in. If you are catching this live or as a replay later on, we'd love to have you comment with where you're coming from. And as we are talking today, feel free live or again, as the replay, if you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat. That's kind of why we're here. So if you have questions, even if they don't necessarily pertain to the topic of tonight, as long as it's about Raleigh and Durham in general, then put them in the chat and we'll get them answered for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of questions, one question we get a decent amount is, does your area get hurricanes? And today we had a tropical storm come through our area. So that was a good example of what it kind of looks like when a hurricane lands on a coast nearby. So in this instance, I think it was in the Charleston area, and then essentially worked its way directly up to us as a tropical storm. I forget. Do you know what the name was? I forget. Debbie.
Like a little Debbie.
Yeah, Tropical Storm Debbie. So
all the memes were the little Debbie logo over the ocean, and it said, "She's coming."
That's true. I did see that. I was wondering what that was. I did see that, but a little bit of rain, a little bit of wind is essentially what we got. I mean, there were some areas that were harder hit with like some isolated tornadoes and whatnot. But in general, you get a good amount of wind, like kind of breezy wind, not crazy wind, and a good amount of rain. So we probably got, I don't know what, 4 to 6 inches of rain, maybe.
I'll have to check tonight before I go to bed. But I don't know. It wasn't that bad in our area, at least. I know. Yeah. I think some places further east had more of those isolated tornadoes that kind of got caused, and that did some damage for them. But all in all, everybody stayed pretty safe in the Raleigh area.
Yeah. We got Next Level joining in from Raleigh. Thanks for tuning in. Next Level. Hope you had a safe day as well with the storm. But yeah, so that is one of the questions we get. And if you are exploring the area, if you're not from the area, today's a pretty good example of what it looks like when a tropical storm comes through the area. So but anyway, tonight we're covering some pretty interesting topics. One topic that I'm really excited to hit on is a bond for the that'll be up for Durham City. So one thing we're pretty consistently critical on is the park system in Durham. Compared to Durham's neighbor, Wake County, the parks just aren't great. When you look at what you find in Raleigh or Wake Forest or Cary or Apex,
literally anywhere else.
Yeah, pretty much anywhere else. Yeah, the parks are nowhere near what they are in those areas in Durham. And we've always viewed that as, something that Durham really needs to work on. And honestly, something that Durham can work on. They just, for whatever reason, they haven't prioritized it.
Yeah, it's interesting because, it's not like the tax rate is that much different. Obviously, the population size
the tax rate's
is different.
Higher.
Yeah, the tax rate, property tax rate is higher. We have Durham, less population, so I get, overall less money pooling in, but it's not that we need the same amount of parks. It would just be nice to have like 1 or 2 really nice ones. Because you go into Wake County, and obviously, you have a lot of cities within Wake County, and Durham County is really just the city of Durham. But you just have huge play structures or like really large trail systems and stuff that we just don't really have here. I feel like most of the playgrounds have the same equipment from my childhood, or it's like, for the longest time, though, one of the ones closest to our house, they are replacing the equipment, so I'm really excited. But it was like for a year and a half, there was like not even any swings on the swing set bar, and I was like, this was like one thing fell off the chain, so the solution was just, let's just take them all off. I was like, I think they could have at least replace the swing, but so there's just things like that where it's like, it's a little bit disappointing.
It is,
but it looks like maybe that could be changing.
Yeah, so this November, on the ballot of folks who live in the city limits of Durham, will get a chance to vote for an $85 million Parks and Recreation bond that will go towards 2 different parks in the area. And you did a little more research on this than I did. So I'll let you talk about it.
It's 2 parks, and then there's a little bit of just refurbishment and other work at some of the other parks. And
this aquatic center at what's this park?
So Merrick Moore Park. So
this
if you're
aquatic center looks
in
amazing.
the area, this is going to be close to the old Wheels. So if you are a like Durham 80s or 90s kids, you probably remember Wheels Fun Park. Durham kind of acquired that, and so where that is, this is going to be kind of butt up right next to it, and that looks
really cool.
Absolutely amazing. So not that I'm trying to tell anybody to vote yes or no. Like, you got to do what you want to do with this bond, but I think Durham could really use something cool like this, because we only have like one park, two parks that even have a splash pad. And they're kind of pitiful splash pads, to be totally honest. So this looks like a resort.
Looks really cool.
Like,
yeah. I mean, you got the slide.
It looks like you're like, are this the Bahamas or something? Like, this is so cool.
It's got the lazy, y'all probably can't see the text if you're watching on the screen, but this right here is a little lazy river with some kind of tunnel. What's this? Some kind of jet tunnel? Obviously, this is concept art, so I don't know if this is going to look like it, but
it probably like throws water on you or something. I don't know.
Yeah, you've got a lap pool.
And it's a zero entry pool, so it's supposed to be a completely inclusive pool. So I think for like people of all disabilities. So I think there's a lot of like wheelchair accessibility. I think inside, I'm not sure that there's an indoor pool, but there is, at least on the outside, a lap pool. So just equipment for it's not just a splash pad, and it's not just a pool. So it's really something for like all ages, which is really, really cool. And it'll be close to the already existing Merrick Moore Park, which is cool because it's just kind of expanding in that area. So that's where I think about half the money is going towards that. And then the other half mainly is
this one, sorry to interrupt, this one would start for this aquatic center. If it's approved, the timeline would be starting permitting in early 2025, starting construction fall of 2026, and completion by summer of 2028.
Yeah, so, and that's the same for both projects. Is a completion estimate of 2028. And then the other big project, there are currently 2 parks in Durham, East End and Long Meadow Parks, that are really close together. Back a long time ago, that land was donated to the city to make parks, back when parks were segregated, unfortunately. And so there were 2 parks there. There was like a all white park and all black park. And obviously that's not the case anymore, but it's kind of odd to have 2 parks that are kind of close together. And so they would kind of take down the things that are there at those parks currently, and just make
and join them
a more unified. So symbolically, like uniting the 2 parks.
It's pretty cool.
But this one looks a little more. It's also still going to have a pool, not like a splash pad type pool like the other one, but a pool. This one's going to be like more like athletic fields. There is still some play equipment, but it doesn't seem like just a playground. This definitely seems more like it kind of makes me think of like downtown Cary Park, where it seems like more of a place where all ages are going to go, more like walking trails, kind of hanging out, meeting up with a friend, some sculpture work. There does look like some play equipment, but it definitely doesn't seem like the highlight of this park. But I think it's really cool, and surprisingly almost the same expense as the aquatic center, which is surprising to me, because I would think an aquatic center would be really expensive to construct. But I think this is going to have like some bridge systems and things to connect the 2 parks. So I'm really excited about both possibilities here. There are a couple small related projects that go along with it. I know that like there was, I don't know, like I think one of them's like closing down an old pool that's not used anymore. So other things are like a little less glamorous, but these are the two big things that are taking the majority, 90% of the funds.
Yeah. And it says right here, for those two parks that would be joined, it'll playgrounds, athletic courts, trails. But yeah, I mean, the renderings here, the artistic renderings do kind of remind me of, some of the more like modern parks we see, like a downtown Cary Park, or even the what's the one in Apex? This new, that one has more play equipment than this one does, but it still kind of looks very similar
in some ways. Pleasant Park,
Pleasant Park,
amazing. If you have kids in the area, you definitely need to check out Pleasant Park. It's probably the most colorful playground I've ever seen. Like they have,
it's really cool.
This, I don't really know it's it's the ground that's there, like it's not turf because it's more of like a rubbery material, but it's like all rainbow and design like pathways, and the equipment's really colorful. And they have athletic fields and splash pad and stuff there too, but it's a huge playground structure there. So that's
it's
a
massive.
really cool park in Lake County. So if you come to visit the area or you're already here and you haven't taken your kids to Pleasant Park yet, it is worth the drive, honestly, no matter where you live in the Triangle, to go check it out.
Yeah, but I mean, in general, I think this is a really cool thing. Obviously, 84 million, 85 million. Obviously, that's a lot of money.
Yeah, not a small
and here's
amount.
I clicked off. I'm showing y'all, like, this is current. And this is what it will become. Yeah. And this is the same over here. And so, I mean, Durham needs this.
Yeah,
and
desperately.
Obviously, the residents of the city have to vote for it to be approved. But this is like, good on Durham for doing a lot of the work ahead of time, presenting this, because so
it gives people a lot of time to think about it. And hopefully, if you live in Durham, definitely spread the word so people know that this is going to be on the ballot, so they know what because if you don't know that it's there and you're just like, oh, that's a lot of money for a park, but maybe if you see what it is, it may be worth it to you, or you may be offended by the whole idea of a bond. So, the more you know, the more educated you are. So let us know in the comments if you are excited for these.
Especially if you live in
Durham.
In the Durham city limits. We do not. So, but
yeah, we live in the county, so we don't get to vote on it, unfortunately, but we will definitely be utilizing these things if they come.
Yeah, for sure.
Our kids would love it. So
Next Level said the aquatic center reminds me of Evermore Bay in Florida. Is that the one? Is that the new one? The new that they made like that? I think it's in Orlando. They made that lagoon, that massive lagoon.
Yeah,
you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about, but I don't know.
Yeah, you'll have to let us know if that's the one.
Yeah, it's like a neighborhood with like a lagoon.
Yeah. It looks really cool.
Yeah, it does look cool.
So anyway, I think this is awesome. So I would love to see Durham pull this off. So some crazy stuff. Move into a little bit on the housing market, then we'll kind of focus on some a little bit smaller studies. Next Level said yes. So
okay, cool.
Yeah, that looks really looks really cool.
That place does look really cool. And Madrid is joining us. Hello, Madrid. Thanks for tuning in.
Yeah, thanks for tuning in.
Yeah, let us know where you're watching from.
So over the last week or so, interest rates have been pretty wild, honestly. So they had one of the largest one-day drops in mortgage rate history, I guess. Yeah.
The biggest in the world ever.
I don't know if it was the biggest drop, but it was
so
it was definitely one of the larger drops where it dropped, I think, from in around
6.9 or something.
No, it was 6.65 or something, 6.8 down to 6.4, which was the lowest it had been in a year. And then the very next day, it dropped again down to, I believe it was 6.32. And if you have really good credit and a really good debt to income ratio, like, there was a chance you were probably at 6. You might have even been in the upper 5s at that point.
Yeah, or could if you afford were like the discount points to get down into the 5s, which would be really nice.
And now they have crept back up into the 6.6s again. So we hit the 6.63 today. So there's a lot of volatility in the market right now when it comes to interest rates and or mortgage rates. And a lot of the drop in mortgage rates was really driven by the jobs report that was released. I think it was released on Friday, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
And it was a pretty rough report. And then that caused the cascading effects of that. And then obviously we had what we saw in the stock market recently. And so there's just a lot of volatility out there. So it was fascinating to see rates drop so quickly, and then really honestly
come back up so quickly,
rebound just as quickly to right where they were.
I was surprised to see that they were kind of back up high again this morning.
I guess if you had to find a silver lining in all of the data that's coming out, it's that there's almost 100% consensus now that the Fed will cut their rate in September.
That'd be nice. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, so hopefully we see a little bit of easing
nice
on that front. So
and Pauline says, tuning in from Clayton finally. Welcome.
Welcome, Pauline. Yeah, thanks for tuning in.
Awesome.
Yeah. I hope y'all are enjoying Clayton, and I hope y'all stayed safe today during the storm.
Yes. Well, this is nothing for them coming from Washington.
So they're
probably like feeling right at home. Yeah.
Yeah. But some interesting data. So obviously with it now being early August, we have access to July data. Inventory crept up a little bit in July. Nothing too substantial. Nothing like the increases we started seeing from April to May and from May to June. June to July was a little more leveled off. What's going to be interesting to see. So if you look at the chart here, and you see these kind of these humps on the chart, really no matter what, except for 20. You can ignore 2020 data is just all 2020 data. You just throw it out. It just doesn't even matter.
Everything about 2020, just throw it
2019, out. If you look at 2019, this kind of hump here. So that is the September, like August, September, October timeframe. And it's pretty consistent. I mean, you see it almost every year. That tends to be right when inventory peaks. So what's going to be interesting to see is where we peak at this year. That September, October timeframe as far as what inventory looks like. What was a big deal this year about June is, because we kept talking about how inventory was increasing, and this graph kind of does it here. I'll zoom in a little bit so hopefully y'all can see this, but this graph is really cool. So our inventory in June was really as close as we had been to pre-pandemic levels of inventory. I know 2020 was still pandemic, and that's kind of a crazy market, but 2019 we had 4,900 units on the market in June that year, and 2024 June we had 3,500. So that was the closest we had gotten outside of 2020 to that pre-pandemic level. So we're still far off from that. Obviously, not even remotely close to pre-pandemic levels. But to see that amount of inventory on the market in June is really not something we had seen in a while.
Yeah.
In a long while.
Yeah, it's been nice for buyers because they have a lot more time to think about what they want to do. I think it's been a little hard for sellers because I feel like the change came pretty quick and rapidly. And so, I think they thought it would be a little easier to maybe move a property. But, for the most part, if you're in a typical neighborhood and your house is kept up nice and stuff, like it's still selling decently fast. But, it's starting to impact more like on the outskirts. We're seeing the inventory days on market start sitting a bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So, it'll be interesting. And another factor that, will be kind of interesting to pay attention to is as the year goes, obviously we saw mortgage rates creep back up to really where they had been. But if we start to see them, if more job data comes out and we start to see those kind of trickle back down again, I think, we could be in an environment in Q4 where we have a little bit lower mortgage rates. And so it'll be fascinating to see, does that increase demand or does it not?
Yeah.
Because the seasonality pictures in that, I think there's also a little bit of fear, of recession. Like, so there's a lot of different factors that kind of play into obviously buyer demand. So
I think with the fall, if the interest rates really do, let's say they went down to like 6, or even if they went slightly below it or something, I do think the demand would pick up a lot because that just opens up so much more affordability for people. And if the inventory kind of stayed where it was, hopefully the prices would I feel like the prices are staying a little bit more stable like this summer than they were last year. So if we keep prices kind of stable for a little bit to help even out make it really seem more advantageous as a buyer in the fall, I think it'll be interesting to see what happens because we've had kind of a little bit of a slower summer. It's not slow by any means as far as the market goes, but definitely a slower than typical like summer month. I feel like we feel like we're already in the fall almost. But if the interest rates drop, I wonder if we'll just end up having a trade-off. But and Sarah said she's tuning in from Mebane. Awesome. Yep. Thanks for tuning in from Mebane.
And then Next Level asked, do you see a housing market slowdown or even crashing? Crashing, no.
I don't think we have enough inventory for like a true crash.
Yeah, I don't think we have enough inventory here for that. Slowdown, I think we're in the middle of this, or at some point in the slowdown, maybe at the beginning of the slowdown, the middle of the slowdown.
And it's a very slow
at some point in that.
Well, I don't know if that's a double negative, but it's a slow slowdown as meaning like this isn't anything like post 2008 or anything like that. It's not like we have more inventory than we could have ever imagined and prices are going down, but I think we have a stabilization for sure.
And some of that is like there's a hyper localness. Is that a word? Localness, hyper localness to the market too. So like if you look at, obviously we're not in Florida. But if you look at Florida, I'll pull that map back up. I was just using because this is a really great example of this. If you look at Florida, like South Florida, here you're in Sarasota. Their inventory in June of 2024 is almost 1,000 units above where it was in June of 2019.
Yeah, I mean they're definitely experiencing it.
Like that's a different level of a slowdown than even we're experiencing in South Florida, and it's pretty substantial. Lakeland, Winter Haven. That's the Orlando area, right? I think it is.
I think
June 2024, almost 4,300 units. In 2019, 2,800 units. And so I just point this out to say like there is a hyper local nature to the market right now, and you're seeing some of those markets in other parts of the country that they're not at the crash level either, but they're at a completely different end of the spectrum and a slowdown than we are. But yeah, so that's kind of a long answer to the question. But yeah, I don't think inventory here, I don't think is high enough to come anywhere close to a crash level.
Yeah, for sure not.
Yeah.
Yeah. And for anyone that's just kind of started tuning in, be sure to let us know where you're watching from. And if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comment section and we'll get them answered for you. Even if you're catching the replay later, we will check them and get them answered for you. So feel free to put your questions there.
Yeah. And continuing on with a different housing market topic, there's an interesting chart put out by this group this organization called Resi Club, of 50 largest housing markets for single family new construction. And it ranked the top 10. I mean, it ranked obviously the top 50, but in the top 10 landed our area, the Raleigh-Cary metro.
It's really interesting.
Yeah, we were number 10 on the list. Charlotte is slightly above us with like 600 more homes than we were. Obviously, Florida and Texas kind of dominate this list. But Raleigh is a top 10 new construction market. And we see that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the Raleigh market really meaning like Wake County and the surrounding area, because there's some new construction happening in Raleigh, but most of it's really going to be outside of Raleigh when you're going into
Clayton,
Fuquay, Garner, Wendell, Wake Forest. That's where we're really seeing a ton of new construction. More than half of what you're going to find for sale out there is going to be new construction in those areas. Not Wake so Forest. Much in Raleigh itself. Yeah, Wake Forest.
You ran the numbers for Wake Forest. What was it?
So 40%? Far this year, about 40%.
That's wild.
Yeah. Single family is lower. Like single family sales is closer to like 35.
Okay.
But if you add the townhomes in, because there's a lot of townhomes going in Wake Forest. So yeah, it's very, very interesting. So I would believe it. I feel like there's definitely a huge influx of new builds in the suburbs of Raleigh.
Yeah. But kind of going back to like that, like looking at the inventory, we talk a lot about how inventory is increasing pretty significantly. And it is, but when you compare it to pre-pandemic levels, we're still low. we need this. Like we need the new construction to add more inventory to the market.
Definitely. So we need it really badly.
Yeah. So we've got Daniel joining in from Sarasota. Yeah,
we were just talking about the market crashing. About your area. Just kidding, not the market.
We were just talking about Sarasota. And it's a beautiful area, by the way.
We love Florida.
Yeah, we love Florida.
Yeah.
We've got Wisdom tuning in from High Point. Very cool.
Nice.
We took our kids to the High Point Kids Museum.
Yeah, the Mary Quibbin. I
don't remember. It's been a little while.
Say, but the same people that own High Point or founded High Point University founded this children's museum. It is amazing. Yeah. So if anyone is we stopped there on a road trip on the way to the mountains because it was like halfway point, and our youngest was like a really little baby. So we're like, okay, we got to get him out and feed him and do all these things. So we were trying to break the trip up, and it was really nice. It reminded me of Marbles, but it was newer
and smaller,
and a little smaller
in a good way.
But in a good way. Yeah. But since it was newer, it felt a little bit clean. Marbles is not dirty by any means, but it just felt like everything's so clean and shiny and nice. And then it had a carousel that was free, which was really cool.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, so if you ever are driving through High Point, definitely worth the time if you have kids to go to that children's museum. It's really, really nice.
Yeah, Daniel said we can trade homes. We got Crystal joining in from Southport. Awesome, Southport. That's a beautiful area.
Yes.
For those who aren't familiar, Southport's on the coast in North Carolina.
Yeah. That's where Safe Haven, the Nicholas Sparks book and movie, it takes place in Southport.
Yep.
But it's close to Bald Head Island, which is a really cool beach destination in North Carolina that you have to take a ferry. There's no cars, so you have to like either walk or do golf cart. It's really fun. But Southport itself is also super cute. So that's very cool.
Yeah. And then Wisdom asked, are any new construction homes fully furnished? Typically, no. I've never known one to be fully furnished.
No, I've never seen a furnished one. I think sometimes
that's for sale. I mean,
maybe if there was a model home that they were having trouble moving, if they own the furniture, but it can be kind of hard to like finance in furniture for people sometimes, depending on the area.
Yeah.
Not uncommon at the beach for like a beach or a mountain home, but in our area, it's a little tricky to like keep it all. But I guess never say never, but I have never seen it.
Yeah, no, I have not either.
Yeah.
All right, moving on to some of the shorter stories. So there's a this one's actually kind of sad. So there's a brewery downtown Durham called Fullsteam, and it's right beside is Motorco still there?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, Motorco's there, and what's that barbecue restaurant that's there too?
The Pit.
Yeah, the Pit's there.
Coco Cinnamon's original location.
Durham
Gear
Food
Street
Hall.
Garden.
Yeah. So there's like a kind of a lot going on in that region.
Yeah.
But there used to not be.
Though.
Yeah, there used to not be.
This was like, if you guys remember, probably 10 years ago when breweries started becoming like cool.
Yeah.
Like, like the hipster thing to do is like go hang out at like forget about regular bars. It's all about breweries now. I feel like this was Durham's like, and you guys, if you're a big beer or a big brewery person, you can correct me because I'm not, but I do feel like this was probably like the first one. And this was like,
I don't know if it was
right around the time of like downtown Durham's been revitalized so much in like the last 20 years, but even the last 10 exceptionally. And this was like one of the first, I feel like since Fullsteam, there's like 10 breweries downtown Durham now.
Yeah, and
so they were like the pioneers.
Yeah, but we used to go, I mean, it was right when we first got married, like in 2016, there was a run club that would start at Fullsteam and they would run like, I don't know, 3 miles.
3 miles
then we'd come back. It's
and
not air conditioned. Like it's just a really cool, it's a really cool spot. And they are packing up and moving out of downtown. I have no idea what's going to go into that place. I don't even know where they're moving to. The last video I watched from the owner,
I don't know if they know.
They didn't know where they were going either.
I think they'll stay in Durham. But I think maybe somewhere with a parking lot, which I wouldn't hate that too much.
But I mean, if you like Fullsteam and you like it, I mean, it was a really cool atmosphere. So it's sad.
Yeah, it is sad. And it's like, I think there's the owner just said it feels like the needs aren't really compatible in that spot. So I think in general, the space was probably a little too small, the kitchen, and, it wasn't air conditioned in a lot of parts of the building. So I think those are some of the bigger concerns, obviously, but there was definitely nostalgia there, which is a little sad to lose. And then part of it, when you go into those like grungy, I don't want to call it grungy in a bad way. I mean, grungy in like this is cool. And
like
unique,
no air conditioning.
No air conditioning. Like, yeah, it was funny. And we're like in the run club in the middle of the summer. And it's like, we're going to end and hang out here for an hour with our friends. And it's like not hot at all. Like, but that was a really cool element to it. So, I mean, I'm excited for them to get a new building, maybe feel a little bit more modern with its conveniences. But at the same time, it is a little bit disappointing because there's just like that interesting grungy factor to it. But I think in a way, like that area is probably Fullsteam started it and changed it a lot. And now everything around there is kind of expensive. So
yeah,
I don't know if that is part of they didn't state that or anything. I don't know if they leased that building or what. But I'm sure it's gotten more expensive over the years because that's like prime real estate now.
Yeah. Sarah said they should come to Mebane. I think Mebane has, cool. Is it Mebane that has Red Oak or is that Burlington?
Yeah, I think it's Burlington.
It's Burlington. Okay. Yeah. But I mean, that would be cool. Y'all have got like Mebane would have, I'm sure, the space to house them. So
cool. Mebane could use something like local feeling. I feel like Mebane's grown so much, but a lot of it's very commercial chain. So I think it'd be cool if they got like some cool local breweries.
It would be. So MI Homes, which is a national builder, they're here in the area. They are going to be breaking ground it's proposed zoning. So this is kind of a far out. It'd be 280 single family and townhome units and be going into Holly Springs. This is per the Triangle Business Journal. So I'm trying to click on this. So if you know where this is, there's a really large neighborhood.
It's our neighborhood, Honeycutt Farm.
Yeah. Called Honeycutt Farm.
We do not own or develop that neighborhood.
And they would be developing the backside of essentially of that neighborhood. So that's Honeycutt Farm's a really large neighborhood already. So to include more development back there would
it be part of the neighborhood?
I don't know. I don't think it would be. I think it'd be something
it would just
distinct.
Back up to it.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember, and I should know this off the top of my head, who the builders because there were two builders at Honeycutt Farms, and I can't remember who they were.
I think MI was.
I think MI was one of them.
But I don't remember the other builder. I feel like maybe Taylor Morrison.
Maybe so.
But
that sounds
it's been a while. I don't know.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it was MI being one of them. So anyway, I mean that it makes sense that they would kind of expand off of that into another part of the area. But this kind of goes along with kind of what we talked about a second ago. Like there's a lot of
new construction in the
area. And when we mentioned new construction hotspots, we didn't mention Holly Springs. And Holly Springs really is one of them.
Yeah.
It really is a hotspot.
Definitely.
For it.
Yeah.
There's a lot going on there.
And Next Level said there is great shopping in Mebane.
There is.
Oh, yeah. And Bright Penny Brewery is in Mebane. I've heard of it, but I haven't been to it. Yeah.
Where is that? I mean, obviously in Mebane, but
I think it's downtown.
Is it? Okay.
I think. Yeah. Sarah will have to let us know.
Raleigh, let me click on the actual study here. Raleigh was named the top city for graduates based on a handful of factors. Let me pull it up here. Nation to metro cost, so cost of living, annual wages, and hiring rate. Raleigh was the number one city in the country.
Yeah, it's a job hotspot
for brand new
for sure.
college graduates.
Affordability, that's interesting. But I guess, Mike, if you included rent in there, not just purchasing a home, then that could definitely be the case. So yeah, I mean, the hiring there, I feel like there's always a lot of job opportunities in Raleigh.
I mean, we just did a video on why people regret moving to the Raleigh area. And one thing we mentioned was affordability, because something we've noticed is when folks get here and they start looking at like a Cary or an Apex, you probably even lump in Holly Springs into that too, because those price points pretty high. People will say something along the lines of, "Well, it's really not cheaper here than where we just came from," and maybe they came from a New York or a California, and and that's true. There's a lot of legitimacy to that. But kind of the flip side of that is there's also a lot of areas here that are a lot more affordable if you're looking at like a Fuquay or a Wendell or a Clayton,
or just Raleigh itself, or Durham itself.
Or even like a Wake Forest. Like there are areas here that are much more affordable than what you would find elsewhere in the country, and there's also areas here that might be more expensive than those same areas in the country. And so it's fascinating.
It's all dependent on the location, obviously. You know, like we I mean, if you're gonna come and move to Cary, you cannot expect to have like a low cost of entry into the housing market. But if you're okay with living in another town, then it could definitely be more affordable for sure.
Yeah. So Raleigh ranked 100, which is their version of number one. So I guess like 100 is like a perfect score. Baltimore, Austin, Raleigh and Austin are always kind of, pretty close to each other. Atlanta, Charlotte was the fifth best. So Charlotte's been working up a lot on these lists lately. I've noticed. Like I remember a couple years ago, you'd see lists of like top places to live, and Raleigh would be on there, and Austin would be on there, maybe a handful of other cities. But rarely was Charlotte on there, I felt like. But Charlotte's working its way up.
Yeah, they're trying to. But the moment you come visit both and you sit in that traffic, you're going to be coming to Raleigh real quick. That Charlotte traffic is terrible no matter what time of the day.
It is bad.
It's so rough.
It is bad. All right, we'll end it with I saw this article, Chicken Max. This is some kind of I was going to say something. It's obviously a chicken restaurant. This is the news article. I'm trying to figure out where. I think they're based out of Kansas City. Yeah. Or no, just Kansas. Sorry. It's close enough.
Close enough. Still has the same word in there.
Just different states.
Yeah.
But they are moving into the area. And it caught my attention because we've been getting a lot of chicken restaurants here.
It's definitely like the stylish
it's
thing,
like
but it's
the
it's funny because
thing.
we were just talking. We have, I don't know, 8 years ago or so, PDQ came into the area, which I think is really popular in Florida, and they kind of came up, and we had maybe 4 locations in the Triangle, and it was really good. But I think they all just closed like a few months ago, which we were pretty disappointed about. We didn't go a ton, but we don't live super convenient to one anyway. But I think Chick-fil-A just has the hold on everybody. And so it's like you have to offer something a little bit different. And PDQ
they have these like
similar.
little waffle sandwiches.
Yeah, the waffle sandwich, that has me very curious. I would much rather have a waffle than a bun.
Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, I think, what was the other chicken place that just Raising Cane's?
Raising Cane's open in Chapel Hill, but that's the only location, so we haven't been there. Yeah,
that's the only one. So. This particular restaurant, Chicken Max, and let us know if you've ever been to one.
I've never even heard of it.
No, I've never heard of it.
I don't know if it's just a Kansas thing or if they have
but they're going to open up, it seemed like, a pretty substantial amount of locations in our area. So I think it's going to be a pretty like regular thing here. And not just here, it seemed like also in the Charlotte area as well.
It looks like they also maybe have chicken wings. And then whatever.
Listen,
I don't know. They have some interesting.
I'm always down for fried chicken.
Yeah.
I love fried chicken.
Yeah.
It's really good.
Who doesn't?
Cool. Well, I think that is all the stories that we had tonight. Do you have anything?
No, nothing to add except for if you catch the replay later, let us know where you're watching from. And if you have a question, feel free to put it in the comments.
Drop it in the comments.
Watching later.
Yep. Cool. Well, thank you all for joining tonight. To those of you who are local, I hope you were safe in the storm today. And we'll see y'all next Thursday.
Bye, y'all.